Well, another year is coming to a close, so I thought the only proper way to mark such an occasion would be to look back at the year that was and review a few of the highlights of complete stupidity that have been floating around. You'll probably find that most of these stories cluster around a few dates because I'm lazy and forgot to keep up with this garbage, so here goes. We're going to start off highbrow with an entry direct from academia: Glaciers, Gender and Science, a feminist glaciology framework for global environmental change in research. Good. I'm glad this paper exists, because whenever I go to read a paper about glaciomorphology, which I actually have done before you take to the comments section, my first course of action is not to read the abstract, but is in fact to Google the author and find out if they're a feminist. Glaciers are key icons of climate change and global environmental change. However, the relationships among gender, science and glaciers, particularly related to epistemological questions about the production of glaciological knowledge, remain understudied. Do they? Do they matter? Does it matter what sex the person looking at the ice is? My first thought upon encountering ice is not to consider what fucking football team it supports, or whether it's more of a tits or ass glacier for fuck's sake. Merging feminist post-colonial science studies and feminist political ecology, the feminist glaciology framework generates robust analysis of gender, power, and epistemologies in dynamic social ecological systems, thereby leading to more just and equitable science and human-ice interactions. Just and equitable human-ice interactions. Fine. But you know, I think the one wielding the power in the equation is not the nervous, erringly polite male scientist or his equally nervous, erringly polite female co-author, but the big lump of fucking ice that's towering over them. But maybe that's just me. But now we move to March, and far from academia, to a vegan cafe in Tbilisi, Georgia, where sausage-wielding ultra-nationalists attacked a vegan cafe in the aforementioned capital. According to the Telegraph, at least 15 assailants stormed into the small Kiwi cafe in the Georgian capital and began hurling sausages, meat and fish at both staff and customers, according to witnesses. Clearly they have a very important point to prove, and are desperate to prove it in the most ridiculous way possible. It may be what it takes, though. After all, it is mutually exclusive to be vegan and nationalist, you stupid fucks. There's an ongoing argument about the role of government in a civilised society, and I'm still not sure where I draw the line. Offer me some scenarios and I'm likely to be somewhat inconsistent in my policies. I believe the government has an obligation to provide universal health care, and that everyone should have to pay into that system, and I believe state-regulated law enforcement is a necessity, but I simultaneously disagree with recent measures to extend surveillance powers, even though this will undoubtedly help said law enforcement. What I think we can all agree on, however, is that the government shouldn't be telling consenting adults how to have sex. Back in April, The Independent ran the following article: UK government concerned too many people could be trying anal sex. Why, UK government, does that concern you? Is it not perfectly acceptable for us to do what we will with whom we will so long as everyone involved is a consenting adult? Quote, officials at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport are baffled at the increase in popularity of the Act despite apparent research suggesting it is not pleasurable for women. The warning is included in a consultation document issued by the department about plans to further restrict access to online pornography. It argues that young people are trying anal sex as a result of having viewed pornography, and that this is an unwelcome development. Why is it an unwelcome development? Read on to find the moral panic that the interaction of penises and anuses is bound to trigger. Many people worry that young people will come to expect their real-life sexual experiences to mirror what they or their peers see in pornography, which often features ambiguous depictions of consent, submissive female stereotypes, and unrealistic scenarios, the consultation reads. Have you forgotten the ability of people to realise that there is a difference between fiction and reality? People don't watch Stranger Things and then lock themselves in the house in case they're attacked by a big green monster or transported to a mirror dimension. See, I'm hip, I'm with the times. Is that what happens in Stranger Things? Yeah, okay, close enough, that's fine. Still in April, a month that has long suffered the association with general stupidity, we move to the BBC, where an article is published relating to the Victoria Derbyshire show. Yes, America, Derbyshire, D-E-R-B-Y spells Derby, I don't know what else to tell you. wherein a sample of just over 1,000 students were surveyed, with 63% of them being in favour of no platforming speakers. Further to that, 54% felt the policy should be enforced against speakers who could be found intimidating. This is so stupid I don't know where to begin. Actually, let's start by defining hate speech, as that is one of the key criteria when it comes to no platforming a speaker under the National Union of Students (NUS) guidelines. According to the UK Public Order Act of 1986, a person who uses threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour or displays any written material which is threatening, abusive or insulting is guilty of an offence if he intends thereby to stir up racial hatred, or having regard to all circumstances, racial hatred is likely to be stirred up thereby. So we aren't allowed to actively stir up racial hatred or be abusive. Note that the word insulting was redacted by the Crime and Courts Act in 2013. Fine, that seems reasonable. The other most relevant act is probably the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1944. Thank you, Wikipedia. A person is guilty of an offence if, with intent to cause a person harassment, alarm or distress, he uses threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour or disorderly behaviour, or displays any writing, sign or other visible representation which is threatening, abusive or insulting, thereby causing that or another person harassment, alarm or distress. Note also, however, the very important point 3 in the section that stipulates that a defence for the accused is to prove that his conduct is reasonable. This is important. This means that you can take all the offence you like, but unless you can prove beyond reasonable doubt that the person causing you distress was doing so intentionally, you're just being a hypersensitive fool. And this is where the NUS has your back. Don't want your opinions challenged? Get the speaker no platformed! And while the article does note that no unions have banned a speaker in the past year, it also makes it worryingly clear that the burden of evidence for doing so is very low. At Canterbury Christ Church University, an NUS rep refused to share a platform with gay rights activist Peter Thatchell, whom she regarded as having been racist and transphobic. Responding to the charge, he told the Victoria Derbyshire programme's debate on no platforming, "I simply say, where is the evidence for that claim? I've asked all my accusers, none of them can provide a single bit of evidence." So 1984, here we come. No need for a Ministry of Truth, we'll do it ourselves. I'm not going to read too much from this one because it's really long and fairly whiny, mostly complaining about Brexit. The main thrust of the article is that people are tired of voting, favouring instead a system of random ballot. This might have some merit, I don't know, but there's a paragraph in it that's so insufferable it can't pass me by. What if this procedure had been applied in the UK last week? What if a random sample of citizens had a chance to learn from experts, listen to proposals, talk to each other and engage with politicians? They'd probably have hated every minute of it. What if a mixed group of elected and drafted citizens had thought the matter through? What if the rest of society could have had a chance to follow and contribute to their deliberations? How would that have worked? Do we all crowd into the House of Commons at once and shout at the group? Surely we did follow the election by listening to television broadcasts, etc., and then made our opinions heard at the ballot box. I think you're thinking yourself round in circles, sir. What if the proposal this group would have come up with had been subjected to public scrutiny? I'm pretty sure yes and no were given a lot of fucking scrutiny. There's not a huge amount of scrutiny to give them. Do we all think a similarly reckless decision would have been taken? Fuck off. Both the Liverpool and Manchester United fans were warned by their respective clubs to be on their best behaviour before the big derby match at Anfield. This is worthy of note because it is one of the most pointless pleas I've ever been party to. Telling football fans to be nice is like telling ICE to stop being sexist. Opponents of what would be the first McDonald's restaurant to open in a Vatican building within sight of St. Peter's Square has been boosted by a group of cardinals living above the proposed site. What I really want to know in all of this is exactly how much business a McDonald's in the Vatican is likely to get. Maybe I'm underestimating the volume of tourists that move through the Vatican, but I don't see the Pope as much of a Big Mac man. A New York man allegedly high on drugs broke into his neighbour's home to save their dog from an imaginary house fire, according to police. Truly a hero of our time. This man is alleged to have mixed LSD with cough medicine before driving his car through the neighbour's fence and saving their dog. From nothing. I do like that he was charged with criminal mischief, though. That sounds like quite a lot of fun. Oh, for fuck's sake, will Brexit never die? Here we are with the latest round of Brexit complaints, this time from an angle of Scotland's secession from the UK. Back in 2014, I was adamant that there was no need to bring a successful 300-year union to an end. After all, as a union, we defeated fascism together, developed an effective welfare state, and, of course, produced a Wimbledon winner. Anybody who called to break apart our union both confused and angered me. Confused I can understand. Angered seems a little bit overreactionary, but carry on. Defending the decision to call for a second referendum, Sturgeon said, "I am determined that Scotland will have the ability to reconsider the question of independence and to do so before the UK leaves the EU, if that is necessary to protect our country's interests. This time around, I'll be on Team Independence." Okay. Why? The current state of British politics is shameful. Brexit has led to a 47% rise in homophobic attacks, racist hate crimes have risen by 42%, and as a nation we are still woefully divided. Still a little sceptical as to how convenient these statistics are, but let's grant them as true. Hardly seems like a reason for further division if you think division is the problem, but let's assume your reasoning isn't flawed and continue. On top of this, the Labour Party is in a state of disrepair so dire that it may never recover, and the Lib Dems are still wallowing in their insignificance. Meanwhile, the right are storming ahead with their conservative agendas, and my generation, a deeply pessimistic and disenchanted group of people, have been left behind, feeling neglected, disconnected and hopeless. Under Theresa May's government, the prospects for young people seem very bleak indeed. That's a lot of very nice vague assertions. You're beginning to lose me. My generation, the so-called millennials, are supportive of the European Union. No, I'm not. I'm deeply sceptical of the EU, much as I appreciate its benefits, and it seems like a well-intentioned plan on the surface, but there's some adage about the road to hell that comes in here. About as socially liberal as people can get. No idea what that means, but I think I'm a social liberal. Why not? And are deeply concerned by issues such as a shrinking NHS, rising unemployment, and the worrying level of wealth inequality. Okay, you have me. Where are you going with this? We are at odds with the majority of the United Kingdom. Do you have any proof of that, or are you just going to assert it? And an independent Scotland would give us an opportunity to heal those sores of a divided society and create a new society, which would be kinder and more in tune with our ideals. Would it? That's good, because it won't have any money after the North Sea gas ownership negotiations are through, let me predict that much. While initially I was fighting against unnecessary division, I now feel that in a society as divided as it currently is, the only way forward is to divide it more? Distance ourselves from the hate and anger. Fuck yes, I'm a pro at hypocrisy bingo. Post-Brexit and with an independent Scotland, young people can work towards building something which works much better for all of us. Something, eh? Well, I wasn't sure up to this point, but now I know that something is on offer. Count me in. The author of this article starts by banging on about her crush on a local vicar before she gets to the good stuff. Years on, I find myself contending with another embarrassing crush. I have a bit of a thing for Jeremy Corbyn. That is unfortunate. Or Jessica Chastain, as I like to call him in company. Well, that seems a bit stupid. It's much easier saying, gosh, Jessica Chastain is hot, than saying the same about Jeremy Corbyn. Well, he isn't necessarily the world's most attractive man. The thing about Jessica Chastain is that he looks like the type of man who would ignore you entirely. It would be your birthday and you'd get back after a long day at work, hoping for some TLC, but Jessica wouldn't be around. He'd be on an Islington estate, stroking the cheek of a weeping woman who'd been shafted by the nasty party, his Trotskyist face a vision of empathy. You sound like a complete twat. Trotsky wasn't necessarily a great guy either. If Corbyn really is Trotskyist, then he can stay the hell away from number 10 if you ask me. I like private property and not being under the thumb of a dictator. And before you armchair communists step in, the theory can be as lovely as you like. If there's not a single case study of it working, you can fuck off. Plus, I think he's pushing his luck by refusing to listen to the elected MPs meant to be working with him. Well, I'm glad we can agree on that much. And my love is nothing when set against those of the devoted Corbynista Lisa Dempster from Liverpool, who recently paid tribute to JC by singing a modified version of Lady Siffer's Something Inside So Strong. I watched this song, linked below. It's fucking depressing to see someone put so much faith in a man whose party is busier opposing itself than it is the opposition. And Arizona man was arrested this past week after he allegedly triggered a distributed denial of service attack on the 911 emergency call system. I really hope that his house caught fire whilst this happened. Danse told the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department that his friend discovered the vulnerability and that he tweaked the bug to trigger pop-ups, open emails, and activate phone dialing. I mean, I'm no one to tell you to be more productive, but maybe develop an app or something if you know this sort of thing well. You can make load more cash with Flappy Bird than you can disrupting police phone networks. And now, the world's most lazy excuse. Danse said he might have accidentally tweeted out the link to one version of the exploit that called 911, but that wasn't his intention. Bullshit. I don't think there's much to add here. This time the Brexit drama has not been played out in a small island, but in the most powerful country on earth. And just as the consequences of Brexit have been underestimated... Have they? I don't think we know what the consequences of Brexit are because it hasn't fucking happened yet. It is only necessary to look at who has welcomed his victory, Nigel Farage, Marine Le Pen and Vladimir Putin, to realise that this is a catastrophe in the making. People who you don't like are happy, so therefore this is a catastrophe. I don't think catastrophe is necessarily the right word, but carry on using Le Pen and Putin as the heralds of doom by all means. It is also true that many of the policies Trump set out in his 100-day plan are unachievable. Most of these promises will evaporate like spring snow, and in the process disappoint the expectations of the angry white men who elected him. So why do we care? Worst fear and catastrophe are seeming a little bit hyperbolic at this point. You're going to have to do a lot to pull it back, mate. But in the end, the problem is not the policies or even Trump's lack of experience, but his temperament. Okay, point granted, Trump's not necessarily the world's most balanced guy. Where are you going with this? In foreign policy, what the president says matters. If he says in office, as he did in the campaign, that Japan and South Korea should develop nuclear weapons to take on North Korea, they may just do that. Really? You think if Trump says make a bomb, Japan will just do that? And that they'll readily cooperate with South Korea? Do you think that Trump can grow wings and fly to Mars as well? On a lighter note, the Holocaust! Olympic figure skating champion Tatiana Navka, the wife of Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman, sparked outrage for giving a Holocaust-themed performance with Andrei Bukovsky. This seems like an excellent way to annoy Twitter activists. Please continue. A video of the routine was posted on YouTube showing the pair dancing and sliding smoothly across the ice. Yes, that fairly accurately describes skating. I congratulate your research. Obviously, the Twitter activists came out in full force, publicising the matter rather than just ignoring it and letting it go away. 6 million are dead, one user said in a comment on Navka's Instagram post. It's not art, it's very sick. You should apologise. I'll ignore the 5 million non-Jewish victims and your awful punctuation and say that she doesn't have to apologise to anyone. The answer to art you think is bad is to create art you think is good, not ritualistic apology demanding. Fucking Brexit! Thankfully, this is the last time that Brexit appears on this list, at least directly, because British politics has pretty much become Brexit and everything else. Anyway, winner of the world's smuggest cunt award. I voted Remain in the Brexit referendum, but I don't want a rerun. I don't want MPs to reject it. I don't want a High Court ruling to stall it. I just want it out. ASAP. Okay, you stand by the spirit rather than the letter of democracy. Glad to hear it. Is this a matter of principle, or why? Because I believe that this sorry saga can only be properly resolved by seeing it through. The only way to end the argument over the impact of leaving the EU is to leave it. Oh dear. I don't like where this is going. It's 17.5 million fellow adults who need to be treated as such. They chose to ignore thousands of politicians, business leaders and economists, because those people, politicians particularly, are career liars, and I wouldn't trust a single fucking one of them, but carry on, and put their faith in Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, the Mail and the Sun. Perhaps equally misguided, but give me a choice between a shit sandwich or shit and chips and I might have a hard time choosing. Maybe they were right. Maybe the experts will be proved wrong. Maybe not. But let's see. I'm more interested in who elevated you to all-knowing sainthood, but maybe you'll tell us in the next paragraph. No such luck, as the author waffles for a paragraph before saying, "We still defer to experts every time we call a doctor or get on a plane, but no longer in politics. How do you become an expert politician, and does it correlate to how brown your nose gets?" It's gone. Good. Years of simplistic propaganda, plus the antics of some in politics, have led people to think politicians are all useless and that they know better. Economists know economy better than me. Negotiators negotiate better than me. But where is the proof that politicians, from the Latin politicus, meaning of, for, or relating to the citizens, still work for the people? Show me that, you pious git. Now's the time to see if they're right. At this point, mate, I'll take this chance just to piss you off. The author then talks on how bad an idea overturning the referendum vote would be, which is sensible. They then go on to say that leaving the EU will be a long and difficult process, which is almost certainly true. They then make a series of increasingly speculative predictions and state them as fact, which is a touch preachy, but then we hit the jackpot. But substance will beat spin. Remainers will be able to join the dots and demonstrate cause and effect. Because you said experts were the ones we should trust, but now it's Remainers. Nice consistency. But let's continue. Slowly, people will see the decades of deceit by anti-EU media and politicians for the Wizard of Oz-style sham they were. And slowly, people will see you as an intolerably smug git. What the hell makes you think you're so right on everything and better than... Oh. At the beginning of the 18th century, Poland was one of the largest states in Europe, a sovereign multi-ethnic republic. By the end of the century, it had vanished from the map, absorbed by expanding empires of Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Great, thanks for the history lesson. Are we saying Putin was part of this process? Maybe he had his team hack the timeline. As it turns out, their point is that Poland was overcome because it was too mired in bureaucracy. Fine, that's possible. Are we saying the US is in the same peril? Last week, Barack Obama ordered the CIA to review evidence that Russia was behind a series of cyber attacks that compromised Hillary Clinton's campaign. My God, I was right! They are hacking the timeline! There is also a strong consensus that Trump's businesses and advisors have extensive connections to the Russian government. Consensus amongst whom? This isn't the CIA again, because they said that there were some weapons of mass destruction knocking around in the Middle East, so maybe not the most reliable source. According to CIA sources, fucking called it, who spoke anonymously, big fucking surprise, to the Washington Post, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told Obama and leading Democrats that he would regard any effort to release evidence of Russian interference before the election as partisan. Good job there hasn't been any fucking evidence! In other words, he put his own party's interest in electing Trump and gutting the welfare state ahead of national interest. Even if Russia did hack the DNC emails, they did nothing but expose the corruption of the political elite. Maybe if they'd hacked the defense grid or something, but they didn't, did they? Besides the Republican Party, America's weakness can be seen in what appears to be an escalating war between our domestic intelligence agency, the FBI, and our foreign intelligence agency, the CIA. This sounds more like a slap fight than a war to me. The FBI released damaging information about Hillary Clinton shortly before the election, which may have swung the outcome in key states and allowed for the election of Trump on a law and order platform. So the FBI told the truth, and that was damaging. Says a lot. Meanwhile, the CIA is belatedly undermining Trump by releasing information about his foreign ties. So the CIA tell the truth, and that's damaging. Says a lot. This is not the sign of a healthy democracy. We can agree there, my friend. If America is this bad, let Putin have it. What the fuck, right? Today, Russia may be a transatlantic giant, but the author and finisher of America's destruction is weeks away from the White House, with Lincoln's party firmly behind him. You are a dramatic ponce. A few weekends ago, if one had the misfortune of timing it so, it was possible to be reading a front-page story on how Nigel Farage feared for his life, while listening to him on his 2-hour weekly LBC radio show as he spoke about how he feared for his life, and watching a TV news bulletin reporting on how Nigel Farage feared for his life. You read the paper, listen to the radio, and watch the television at the same time. Fuck me, that's impressive. Also, there are channels without Nigel Farage on. I think so, at least. Shit, let me check. It is sinister how ever-present Farage has become in the public domain. No, it isn't, it's just stupid. The rest of this article is just complaining about Farage getting airtime, which is possibly legitimate, or would be if they hadn't just written an entire article about too many people writing articles about Nigel Farage. For fuck's sake. In an interview with Love Sunday magazine, the 41-year-old star admitted, "I wear earplugs all the time now, even on the tube." Fuck off, Gareth. And fuck off, Telegraph, if this is the best thing you can find to write about. And one final entry for the current year. Who would have thought that British politics could have stooped lower than such a universally stupid campaign as Brexit, with lies and empty words flying so thickly in the air in both directions? It's high time that our government shows that we're above petty name-calling and can work professionally despite our differences. Nicky Morgan banned from Downing Street meeting after criticising Theresa May's £995 leather trousers. Oh, for fuck's sake. Fiona Hill, a top aide to Theresa May, branded Nicky Morgan, the sacked former Education Secretary, that woman after Ms Morgan was publicly critical of Miss May's decision to wear trousers that cost £995 during a photo shoot for a newspaper. Are the people running our country all 12? Miss Morgan had expressed doubts about the fashion choice, insisting, "My barometer is always, how am I going to explain this in Loughborough Market? I very much doubt that anyone in Loughborough gives a fuck what trousers you're wearing. Not to burst your bubble, but I'd question if most of the people shopping in that market know who you are." So the year comes to an end, a long, laborious end, with stupidity trailing behind it at every turn. But don't worry, soon the current year will give way to the new current year. The king is dead. Long live the king. Happy New Year.